Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, a podcast that is an informational and human interest show for those affected by prenatal brain injuries from exposure to alcohol, for their families, and for anyone else wanting to learn about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Brought to you by me, Patti Kasper, your host, and also your FASD coach. This week, I am delighted to bring to you Miss Elena Schmidt, who is, well, sort of kind of a young adult, because I'm 60, so anyone younger than 40 is a young adult in my mind. But Elena is joining us this week on the microphone, and she is relatively new to figuring out that her life has been affected by prenatal exposure to alcohol. And for those of you who have been tuning in regularly, you know that that is a soft spot for me because there's over 15 million adults in the United States who have never realized that their struggles in life are related directly to alcohol exposure in the womb. So, Elena, thank you so much for joining me on Living with FASD. Thank you for wanting to share your story because you never know who's going to hear your story that's going to say, ah, me too. So glad you could be here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we spoke for a few minutes before we started recording, and I know a lot of this is going to be rehashing what you already shared with me, but can we start by talking about who you are, right? Where you come from, nothing that's going to help people to know exactly where you are, right? We want to protect your space, but your journey, right? What made you think that alcohol might have something to do with your life story?
So I came from a different country, Belarus, which is between, if nobody knows, it's between Ukraine and Russia. Um, and in the orphanage, they um technically they don't really diagnose people like in the orphanage like they do in the hospital, but they don't use the terminology as of FASD.
Mhm.
They just kind of give a brief like, okay, this is what the mother did. So how I found out growing up, my adopted mom really didn't talk much about FASD or even use that terminology.
Mhm.
She just said that, yeah, your um biological mom did drink while pregnant with you. So um I just kind of like uh you know, we talked about it a little bit and then it kind of like went away, and my
So the
mom,
information was always there, but nobody connected the dots.
no.
Yeah.
And I think my adopted mom like didn't really understand, because back in the like early 2000s or in the 1990s, people don't really come out and say, oh yeah, she has fetal alcohol syndrome. And I think my mom really wanted me to have the best life that I could. But
Mhm.
with my brother also maybe likely having it too, it was a struggle.
Mhm.
And especially like with my dad, like now is being uh around the house and kind of like in and out of our like lives. It's
Mhm.
kind of hard. And he has like severe depression, or he had severe depression. So it was like hard growing up.
Yeah. Hang on
And
for me 1 second. Okay. So your dad he was there, but he wasn't there?
Yeah, like, he tried to help, but he was just always in his, like, little room, like, down the basement. He liked to be
Mm.
alone and not to be, like, disturbed.
He was in his man cave.
Yeah, and my parents, like, sometimes fight and, like,
Okay.
they'll get into arguments, but, like, they'll sometimes it gets really, really bad, and sometimes it's like, one leaves for, and then to
Mm,
come back, and it's like
okay.
it's
So
kinda
there
like a
was a lot of
circle.
chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with my sister being the youngest, and she's my mom's, like, biological daughter,
Mhm.
she didn't have FASD, and so she always thrived, I felt like,
Okay.
faster, so I felt like I was always behind her even though I'm
Mhm.
the oldest.
Mhm.
So and she's the youngest by, like, 4 years,
And your
but
brother is halfway, right? Isn't he like
yeah,
2 years younger than you?
he's, like, a year and a half
A
younger
year
than
and a
me.
half. Okay.
Yeah. So, he he also had a lot of struggles, um,
Mhm.
and we were always, like, trying to, um, be, like try to fit in
Yeah.
the family because
Yeah.
my mom has a big family, and it was just very overwhelming, like, at parties and our Christmas gatherings and, like,
What made it overwhelming?
because there was just big
Too
crowds.
many people
There's too many people, and
and
my dad's
too
side of
much
the family.
going on?
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
like, just my dad's side of family is, like, alcoholics in a way, like, they
Okay.
drink a lot, so
Mhm.
not everybody, but, like, I noticed my uncle drinking and my dad and, and it was just, like, I didn't understand it back then,
Mhm.
and I just always had, like, mood swings, so I was always crabby, and my mom couldn't understand why, like, it's Christmas Eve, it's like, "You should be happy,
Mm.
like, why aren't you happy?" It's like, it's
Yeah.
not that I didn't get the toy that I liked or anything like that, I was just always, like, in this crabby state, like, I couldn't, like, get
Yeah.
out of this.
Well, in part, I think that's a typical adoption reaction, right? Because
Yeah,
in order to be chosen by one family, you have to be unchosen by another, right?
mhm,
Um, so that's a very common issue, that any kind of holiday, birthday, special events, the mind naturally wanders to, I wonder if my parents or my grandparents or my aunts and uncles, ever think of me. I wonder if anyone back home ever remembers me. So
yeah,
that makes all kind of sense to me.
yeah, and just, like, always I felt like being pushed away from, like, my parents because
Mhm,
they had to deal a lot with my brother who has major behavioral issues,
mhm. So I'm
and,
curious, Elena, have you talked with your brother? Are you still in relationship with your brother? Do you talk
um,
much?
no, me and my family are kinda strained right now just
Okay.
because I me and my mom just don't get along, so I just kinda
Okay.
moved out early
I
and
was just curious if you had shared with him, hey, this is what I realized I'm dealing with, and it sounds like you too.
yeah, my brother really doesn't, I mean,
Okay. I'm sorry to
have
hear
that
that.
kinda, like, understanding. It's really
Yeah.
hard for him because I thought he might have autism because, like, his basic understanding and, like, social skills are
Mhm.
poor.
Mhm.
He you know, he couldn't make friends very easily, and he was
Yeah.
always like we were call us, like, twins because we were so close in age, and, like, we both have the same, like, issues, so we would
Yeah.
always stick together,
Yeah.
um and he's been, like, really close, and then, like, one day my mom was, um, you know, we we lived together in a condo for about 6
Mhm.
months, and my mom kinda had, like, this major fit or something, and I just, I couldn't really live with my brother because he was kind of doing stuff I didn't like, and I didn't really understand, and it wasn't working out, so I just moved
Okay.
out. And so, and then like I moved to Michigan, and try to have a life here in Michigan.
Okay.
And
What made you choose Michigan?
I had a friend like
Okay.
that lived here, and
Hmm.
I just need to get out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
And so it's been uh kind of like I lost the train of thought from it.
How long have you been in Michigan?
For about right now 7 years.
Okay.
So it's been quite a while, and I really
Hmm.
enjoy it here. And
Hmm. Where were you brought up? What state?
um St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. Yeah, you
And
went quite a ways north.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a long trip, and my
Yeah.
friend drove, and because it was hard for me to drive, and
Hmm.
because I have anxiety when I drive, so don't drive a whole lot. And I
Okay.
do have my driver's license, and it took me forever to get it because I just like the learning process was very, very difficult. So
Yeah.
now it's easy to get it exact. So my mom would always push me to um get it. And so once I got it, it was like a really like a huge success. And my
Hmm.
mom thought, well, if she can get this, she can,
Do
move
anything.
out. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And once I started driving, I had been into several car accidents. I had been to,
Oh.
so it's just, the anxiety there is like really
Hmm.
hard.
Yeah.
So, my mom can understand why, like, okay, you got this license and now you're getting to accidents. Like, okay, like, something's not right. And
Yeah.
like my left and my right, like, okay, I don't like sometimes it surprises
You
me how like I got license. Yeah.
well, some things are they're such totally different skill sets, right? There's
Mhm.
all the academic bookwork stuff, like being able to memorize the laws, how many feet you have to stop. You know what I mean? You can't park within what distance. And here in California, well, like in Pennsylvania, where I grew up, you had yellow curbs and that was it. You had yellow curbs. Here in
Oh,
California, they've got yellow, they've got red, they have blue, they have green, and they all mean different things. It's like,
yeah.
so state by state, I mean, Missouri and Michigan have different rules
Mhm.
and different laws. So you've moved and now you've had to relearn everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I um I've gotten cars and how to resell them because I just like, I'm like, I don't know, like if I can handle driving. I use like transportation if I can, like
Hmm.
I and I go like day program where they do transportation, so that helps a lot.
Okay.
And and so it's like it's been difficult, but yet like kind of easy. Like
Hmm.
not that I'm not like I
It's
don't.
it's less convenient, but it's less stressful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And inconvenient in the sense that you have to schedule your life around the opportunities you have to get rides.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And like
their buses aren't always running when you need them to be.
no, and sometimes transportation, like you have to call like in advance for like a doctor's
Hmm.
appointment. And like, I just switched doctors where I can get transportation, which is really nice.
Okay.
And they schedule like you have to schedule 3 days in advance, which is not bad, but I always forget to do that and I wait
Yeah.
until last minute. So that's been like a struggle. And
Yeah.
so it's like I miss appointments because I miss the transportation, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, maybe I should get a car. Maybe I should. It's
Or another thing you could try, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, then there's always more ideas, would be when you make the appointment, immediately set up your transportation right then and there.
That's a good idea. I should probably do that.
right? So when you're done chatting with the receptionist who makes the appointment, you could say,
Mhm.
"Could you transfer me to the transportation, transfer my call to the transportation desk?"
Yeah, and this doctor's office, like, that I switched to was really nice, and they're like, do you they ask you, like, automatically if I need a ride there,
Mhm.
and I'm
Good.
like so, like, this doctor's office is really,
Yeah,
convenient because they are automatically ask you, like, "Hey, do you need a ride?"
that's
We have
awesome.
patients, I usually, like I have this, like, big calendar, like, right next to my desk,
Hmm.
and I write down, like, the date and, like, the time and stuff,
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
just, like, automatically forget because I don't look at it after that. So it's like, "Oh,"
Do you look
but
at it every morning when you wake up?
no, because I usually go to the kitchen, right, like, first thing, and then I get my coffee, and then, like, I have,
Okay.
like, this like, I try to put, like, what, I'm working with, um like, with my therapist and, like, people that are helping me, like, to try to put it somewhere where I'll see it every day. So I moved my
Yeah.
calendar, like, instead of on my desk, like, in front of, like, the door or something,
Hmm.
because when I walk out, like, it'll be, like, right there. Because
Yeah.
I take the month or I tear it off and I put it on the door when I walk
Hmm.
out, so it's, like, right there in front of me.
Okay.
So that helped,
Or
but
next
it's
to the
just kinda,
coffee
like, trying to
machine.
make yeah.
Next to the
That too,
coffee
or
machine. That
put,
way you
like,
can be
5
looking at it while you're waiting for your cup of joe.
yeah, that too. Anything that helps 'cause, it's
Yeah.
like and sometimes I, like, forget, not on purpose, but it's like my brain
Well, sure.
just has a million things, and it's like, "Oh, man."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things to track and keep tabs on. So forgetfulness is definitely it is something that so many of us struggle with, right?
Yeah,
Um, and so is planning and organization. So using your calendar, kudos to you because that some people just don't get that figured out, and it's a tremendous help. So
yeah, and
yeah, I
this
have to write things down all the time.
I try to write things down, but it's just like my brain just doesn't always, like, connect, like, "Okay, I
Yeah,
gotta write this down," but then I just kinda, like, forget on that, like,
yeah,
just for, like, 5 minutes later because.
yeah,
Like, I don't know, like, my brain goes, like, blank or something, and then I
yeah,
just, like, "Oh," like, I don't even remember what I'm doing, like, 5 minutes ago, or because I have
yeah,
short-term memory
yeah.
loss. Because sometimes even, like, with conversations with people, I get, my brain, like, blocked, like,
Hmm.
it stops thinking. I don't
Yeah,
know, like,
yeah.
it and then
Well,
I
that's
listen.
I think I had mentioned earlier about how alcohol affects the structure of our brain, right? If you think
Yeah,
about if a building is under construction, you see the scaffolding that the workers set up so that they can access different parts of the face of the building, right? Whether
yeah,
they're window cleaners or whether they're sculptors or whatever it is that they're doing, they've got scaffolding so that they can climb up and reach things and do and climb back down. Alcohol will break a number of those supports, and along which the neurons have to send their messages from one to the next. And so that interferes a lot with memory. We tend to have struggles either filing information into those filing cabinets, right, the short-term memory cabinets, or we're not sleeping well, and it's when we're in deep sleep that information goes from the short term memory over to the long term memory cabinet, right? Or we
yeah,
have trouble getting information back out. And for a lot of us, it's like walking into a file room and all the drawers are open and papers have just gone everywhere, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
and a lot of people struggle with memory. Neurotypical people can struggle with memory if they're tired or stressed.
Yeah,
We're not alone in that.
No,
But
I think sleep has a big part because
mhm,
I've learned about like I have big sleep issues, and I think I was watching a video on you and this person like talking
Dr.
about
Brown,
sleep.
yeah,
Yeah. And it kind of like dawned on me like how sleep is so important, but so many
mhm,
people, doesn't matter who, like neurotypical, like, we
yeah,
just all struggle with it
yeah,
from time to time due to
yeah,
stress or like our daily living or,
yeah.
but I feel like, sorry, I
Oh,
feel
no,
like
I go ahead.
um people with FASD tend to struggle more because we
Mhm.
just have like this feeling like we always, at least for me, I have to like move or like I can't, like my body won't stay still. But
Mhm.
yeah, I get so tired like halfway through, like it's
Yeah.
it's almost like I can't get one or the other to like
Yeah,
properly.
yeah.
Either I'm really, really tired or I'm really, really hyper. Or I'm
Yeah.
both
Well, there's a
at
lot going on just with that issue, right? Because when there's structural issues going on in our brain, that our brain has all these detours set up, it takes a lot of extra energy, right?
yeah.
Um, excuse me, I had shared earlier that a fully functioning brain uses 25% of our body's allotment of energy every day, right?
Mhm.
Is 2% of our body weight, but it sucks up 25% of our energy load. And so if we're working harder to cover those basic things, up cognitively, we're
Mm.
working so hard to get things done that really depletes the battery level and leaves less and less energy for the body to do everything else that it does. So we do run out of steam. And then that's even for someone who is getting adequate rest. So if we're not sleeping well, that just really compounds it and draws the battery down even faster and farther. So it's kind of like if you look on your cell phone and there's the battery symbol up in the corner and it has,
Yeah.
those different levels or bars, whatever it is, to show you how much energy is left in the battery. When you get to like 10% or below, it's red, right?
Yeah.
So there's
It gets
days if we have a
deeper.
lot going on, it's like our body's walking around on red.
Yeah. It feels like it's almost like every day because it's like something happens, like at least in my life, something new happens every
Yeah.
day. So it's like, I wake up, I have like a routine I try to follow,
Hmm.
um and it's just like I try to stick with that routine. And then
Hmm.
like sometimes after that I get really tired, and
Yeah.
then I saw something about like spoon theory where like you
Hmm.
take a lot of spoons and then
We
like
only got so many spoons every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I looked up that, and I looked up a lot about FASD and
Hmm.
um just how like the brain works,
Yeah.
and it's not just the brain, it's actually the whole body
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
with fetal alcohol syndrome, it affects the heart, affects the kidneys, it
Hmm.
depends.
The alcohol affects whatever is under construction at the time of exposure. So, but the brain is developing every single day of the pregnancy. So it doesn't matter when the exposure is, our brains are going to take a hit, but the lungs don't develop at the same time as our toes or our spine or our liver.
Yeah,
Those all have different points. So yeah, whatever, and that's why there's 428 comorbid conditions, right? In other words, 428 other physical things that, they're not contagious things like nobody can catch from one another.
yeah,
Is it 400 another 28 things that can go wrong with our body that don't have to. I mean, we're not going to get all 428 things, but we get them more often than the general public.
Yeah.
because of our FASD. And it's not that the FASD caused those other things, but we just got them more often. And that's the effect of alcohol on the body.
Yeah. And like with my birth mom, like drinking like second trimester, like um and she was an alcoholic, so
Mhm.
much of like what I don't know like much of her like drinking, like if she stopped drinking, if she found out or she kept drinking, I'm not really sure, but
Mhm.
I know it's just like, a lot of even like the early stages can affect
Yeah.
like the brain and stuff because your
Well,
brain
sure.
is very vulnerable and your
Yeah.
cognitive. So, and only like 10% people have like the facial,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
there's a lot of people that think that having the facial features means that we have the worst kind, right?
Mhm.
But really, all those facial features indicate is that our mothers drank between days 17 and 21.
Yeah,
It's the only
because
thing.
it's like, yeah, I think it doesn't matter like when the mother drinks, it still affects like the body. And I think
Mhm.
a lot what I've heard, like the mother starts drinking earlier because they don't know and
Mhm.
they don't understand like, this will affect their child
Yeah,
and they don't do it on purpose.
right.
And like what hurts is that this it's so stigmatized
Mhm.
that people don't get a chance to really grasp the knowledge.
Yeah,
Like these kids that are from like, they grow up and they think, well, once you hit adulthood, they just stop. It's like, oh,
oh,
well, they're adults, like, you
no
know,
longer disabled.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
because they're like, well, the brain grows and then keeps forming, so they think it'll just go,
yeah, repair
um,
itself.
yeah, it'll just
Yeah,
repair. But
yeah.
a lot of those neurons are irreplaceable and you can't
Once
ever
once
get
they're
back.
gone, they're gone. Yeah,
So your brain is like developing without those neurons. So you're
yeah,
always with the struggles
yeah.
through until,
I
whenever.
like the analogy, Elena, of explaining it for a disability that people can see, right? Like if you're missing a leg, when you
Mhm.
turn 18 or 21, your missing leg is not magically going to reappear.
Right.
It's just not. That doesn't mean that along the way you can't learn how to live your life as
Mhm.
well as someone who has two legs.
Right. Because
But
there's
just because you've learned other ways of doing things doesn't mean that you have your leg back.
right. And there's always, you get support with that and you get, people to help you. Okay,
Mhm.
this is what works best. Let's do
Yeah,
it this way. And
yeah,
what kind of frustrating, at least when I was growing up, is the teachers would always like, you know, have this argument with my mom, like, oh, she can't do this, this, this. And my mom
mhm,
would say, like, oh, yeah, she can do this, 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 like, because I push her. And then I
mhm.
could never get it. And it's like frustration, not just with
Yeah,
my mom, but with my teacher and
yeah,
especially with my brother's teachers. And it's
yeah,
like, well, what do you do when they turn 18 and the services aren't there? Because
yeah.
that's why my mom was pushing me so hard to live on my own or live,
Mhm,
try to live as independently as possible.
mhm.
So because she knew probably that those services weren't gonna be available once I turned
Yeah,
18, and she was
yeah.
right. Because once I turned 18, I was typically an adult, and I
What
hadn't.
little help there was disappeared.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I graduated from high school, and then, I knew college wasn't gonna be an option because the struggles that my learning disability was very hard, so
Mhm.
just learning was um was not clicking. So
Yeah.
but I managed to learn on my own like different ways because stuff that I learned in school never interested me, and so I
Mhm.
just I felt like I didn't really like I
Yeah.
didn't push myself, but
Yeah.
it just like especially with math, like I get the numbers mixed up. So
Mhm.
it was very hard to grasp the
Yeah.
mathematics.
Yeah. And that's another very common struggle. You know, when I was in college back in the 80s, a good friend of mine was in she went in a job training kind of program just because she really wanted to flesh out, am I pursuing the right career for me? Right.
Mm.
And the book that this particular program used was called What Color is Your Parachute? And the premise of that book is there's a difference between a vocation and an avocation, right? That being with an avocation, you are passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah.
It fills you with meaning and it's doing something that you want to show up for every day. Whereas a vocation is just a job
Mm.
and one that we don't necessarily like.
Right.
And if we're in jobs that we don't like, those jobs don't get our best, right? And we
No,
tend to job hop and everything else.
exactly.
So the
A
trick
lot of
is find out what really you enjoy doing and then figure out how to get paid for it.
yeah, and my goal, I'm really passionate about writing. I'm passionate about like media arts, about, camera, like
Okay.
voiceovers and doing stuff like behind scenes, like in the media
Hmm.
arts, basically. And so I write a lot of scripts. I used to play with like role play, like you can do this role play online. I used to
Hmm.
do that, like pretending you're somebody else. And I really do enjoy. And it's hard to find people like nowadays who are like, what's that? Like, you become a character and I become a character, and we just kind of like follow this storyline
Hmm.
until like you kind of make up your own story, and it's really fun. It's almost like Dungeons and Dragons without the uh game
Without
board.
all the magic spells.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like whatever like
Yeah.
you guys decide to do. It can be
Yeah.
like more than one person. And I like to do like usually one-on-one because it helps to focus. Because when you have multiple people, it's hard to follow because you have
Yeah.
to wait until that person gets online or like is
Right.
ready. And it's very hard. You have to kind of schedule it all out. But
Yeah.
I did it
So
with.
So maybe the program you're in can help you find those opportunities
Mhm.
that will pay you for behind the scenes kind of work.
Yeah. And I want to go like there's a community college like that does media arts,
Hmm.
and they help with like people with learning disability,
Hmm.
and so I'm working on trying to get into that program for the
Okay.
fall uh fall program, I think of this year, fall of
Okay.
2024. And so it's a while, but like it helps because I can get myself ready. So it's like,
Hmm.
but like in the meantime, I try to like do anything that like does with creative writing or like, write my own stories and stuff
Hmm.
like that. So I enjoy like a lot of like creative writing, poetry and
Yeah.
uh I feel like I like live in my own head a lot of the time
Yeah.
because the world around me is just so chaotic, and you kind of like want to hide in your own like little bubble because
Hmm.
it's more fascinating than it's in real life.
Well,
Because
and that's something else that's very common with us who are living with FASD. So, can you share with the listeners or viewers um, how getting the diagnosis or figuring out that, connecting those dots, of seeing that document that your mom had been drinking during the second trimester, um, with looking at your life struggles, how did putting those pieces together make a difference for you? How did it improve things for you?
Sorry. So I didn't really realize about FASD for about a year this past year, but I knew that my biological mother drank due to my sister telling me when I was on the computer, and she kind of told me like flat out like, hey, did you know like your birth mom like
Yeah.
drank while pregnant?
So
And so
she had seen a document.
yeah, there was
Yeah.
like a paper that said like it didn't say fetal alcohol syndrome, it said like drinking when like second trimester
Hmm.
in the like the birth weight and
Yeah.
premature, and I had a lot of hearing problems. Um like I'm partially deaf in like both of my ears, so like
Okay.
I had surgeries on
S-
both of them
And
when I
that
was
that also confirms alcohol use.
yeah. And I have vision problems, and the glasses that typically wear is affecting the behind my ears right now because
Oh,
I have scars that like it rubs, so it gets
from the scars from your
yeah,
surgeries? Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm right now they're just trying to give me glasses that like will help. um
What about contacts?
I tried those. I can't my
Okay.
eye I can't get my hand to get that close to my face,
Right?
feeling like I'm poking my eye out.
Yeah. I
But
remember when I was in, I think a junior and senior year of high school, I tried the contact bit. And when I had my first broken heart, what I said, you know what? I'm so over this. I'm out, right? And I'm driving and I was crying because, I was 16. I was sobbing, tears everywhere. And when I got home, I was trying to take out my contacts so I could go to bed. And I
yeah.
got the one out and I kept like really putting pressure on my eyeball with this one to like trying to get it out. Well, what had happened was on the drive home, I had literally washed the contact out.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow. It's like not in there
yeah, I don't
actually.
do contacts anymore.
Yeah. My my mom tried to get me into contacts, and I can't do makeup on my face because I can't get to that like point because I have
Okay.
very sensitive eyes, and like with lighting and stuff, I'm very sensitive to light and very sensitive to like sound and like
Okay.
I guess they call it like selective hearing. Like oh, I can't hear, but you can hear
Well,
this.
but so many of us do have extra sensitivities to things, right?
Mhm.
Sensory processing disorder goes hand in hand with many of us with FASD, where we could be hypersensitive or the other way. We could
Under
need more.
sensitive
Yeah. Yeah. So
because
is
I was
that why you're wearing the baseball cap? Because it helps block some of the light?
yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because the one light is like it helps kind of like block out the light. So
Hmm.
it's and plus I just like wearing baseball caps just because it's comfortable
There
too.
you go.
And plus like at the program like I cook, so
Hmm.
like you have to wear like either a baseball cap or
Or a hairnet.
or a
And
hair.
and
And
who
I will
likes
not wear a
hairnets?
hair. I will not wear one. And it's just like people are very like you know I'm sensitive to like tone of voice,
Hmm.
and especially with like people yelling or screaming or
Yeah.
fights I get
Yeah.
very like nervous,
Well,
and I
and
can't
that goes right back to your childhood trauma,
yeah.
where I imagine the orphanage had not all the time noisy, but I imagine there were times where it was noisy.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
but the
it's
trauma of your parents' arguments,
yeah, and
yeah.
I think Well, yeah, in the orphanage, it was kind of like survival of the fittest because we didn't have like because of
Yeah.
the Chernobyl accident, the food shortages was kind of low. You couldn't get
Yeah.
food from like certain places because of the radiation
Yeah.
and my um you
That's
know
right.
my
That's right.
dad.
You were in the midst of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was born like 70 miles from the area, and I
Yeah.
was born like the worst of it, and it was just like
Yeah.
so you have all these children like you know trying to feed, and you can't feed them, and the government, and what was born like when the USSR was like not like shutting down, like they were not in power, but they were
Hmm.
struggling like, okay,
Yeah.
where do we go from here? So there was a lot of fighting, and
Yeah. There was so much unrest and turmoil in those years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like when I know I don't know if people know about the HBO show Chernobyl that was in 2019. They did a documentary series.
Okay.
That's the closest thing, like if you watch it, that's the closest thing that is um is related, like what happened.
Hmm.
And it's very it's hard for me to watch it because it hits close to home, but I
Yeah.
know like, friends and stuff like watch it. They're like, "Oh my gosh!" And sometimes
Yeah.
I'll comment, like I'll watch reaction videos and I'll comment below, like, "Hey, like this is really accurate, and this is
Hmm.
actually like." I tell them like some stories about like how even though I was 4, I can still remember like it was a struggle. We didn't have the
Yeah.
food, and
Yeah.
even if we did, it was just like fight for, who
Yeah.
gets
You
what.
remember the hunger.
Yeah. So it's
Hmm.
like, and my dad even said, like, oh my gosh, like this is like really bad. Like, and my
Yeah.
aunt got sick due to the water um
Oh. So
poisoning.
when your aunt and your dad went to get you and your brother.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
aunt got really sick and almost died. And so it was
Oh.
like, it was another delay of him,
Yeah.
like, getting me back to the US, and my
Yeah. Was she
mom
in the
was.
hospital over there?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
was in the hospital for another, like, 2 weeks just
Oh,
trying to
wow.
get the trying
Yeah.
to get her better and stuff, and they're like, "Don't
Yeah.
drink the water there, don't, like, eat the food, like, be careful
Yeah.
what you eat, you can only eat, like, certain" you
Yeah.
know and then it's only been, like, 7, like, 8, 9 years after it happened, I think, so it was
Mhm.
still f fresh
Yeah.
for people, and,
Yeah.
the government doesn't was trying to hide it to
Yeah.
make it sound like it's not as bad as it seems, so it's just
Yeah.
like
But it really was.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
top of it, you had a lot you know, alcohol is a really big thing in
Yeah.
Belarus,
Well, and I think, it's a way of managing all the stress, if you will,
mhm,
from the nuclear accident, right? Much like what we saw a few years ago in the height of the COVID pandemic.
mhm, yeah.
Alcohol use went right?
Oh, yeah,
Because
because
because of all the stress and all the chaos and all the turmoil. I had a job, now we don't go to
like,
the
what do I
office anymore, right? Yeah.
yeah. And it's like, what do you do now since
Yeah.
it's like everything's over and you feel
Yeah.
like this is going to last forever? And like,
Yeah.
I had a huge alcohol problem, like, not too long, like since I was 14, I used to drink
Okay.
a lot, and, my mom would drink too, and, wine. And she actually gave
Hmm.
me like, she's like, oh, you can try this wine, like,
Okay.
just stay at home and drink it, just don't go out. But
Yeah.
that
And that's
mom,
not unusual. But sometimes the results of that are disastrous.
yeah, and it's just
So were you hooked at first sip?
yeah, it was just
Okay.
kinda like, and then when I became, like, 21, I think I just started drinking a lot more, and then I got into a bad relationship, and then my ex started drinking a lot more, and
Mhm.
so it just kinda, like, became the
Spiraled.
cycle,
Yeah.
and and it's just like I didn't think I had alcohol problem like until like my friends were like, "Oh yeah, like something like you keep drinking and you keep getting into trouble and stuff like
Mhm.
that." And it wasn't with really technically with the law, you know, like, but I never got arrested, but I did like a police did, you know, say, "Hey, you need to chill out or something," because I was
Mhm.
really aggressive. And even
Mhm.
without the alcohol, I was like really aggressive person. Because if you tick me or you get me angry, I really will fight back. And I don't do
Mhm.
it out like I hate you. I just do it because of like that fear, like, okay, I gotta like um
Sorry, my dog's just freaked out.
what- oh, you're
I
right.
think I think they heard something outside. It's like, charge.
Oh, you're okay. Um, yeah, anyway, so
So
it's
how did you how long ago did you stop drinking and how did you do it?
so I am put on this medicine. It's called Vitrol. It's a
Okay.
shot that I take every month, which helps with the cravings. And
Okay.
I started taking it about like 6 months ago.
Okay.
Um, because it's gotten to that point where I didn't know what to do. And like
Mhm.
I tried everything and I still have the cravings. And then like the opioids addiction really did not help. Like, you
Okay.
know, so it was kind of like the medication that helped me like stop the cravings for that
Mhm.
month. So if you stop the shot, the cravings will come back, and that's
Mhm.
like you kind of going backwards. So I have to
Yeah.
get the shot like every month on a certain day. I mean, I
Okay.
think there's other ways, and they said they want me to go to like a 12-step
12-step
program.
meetings. Mhm.
Yeah, 12-step meetings. So I've been trying to get into those.
Yeah.
Um, and what's hard about that is due to transportation and where it's
Mhm.
located, it's in the bad part of town, and I don't
Yeah.
feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
So I just stick with the shot and I get help from therapist and case manager, and they've been really
Mhm.
helping me with, know, with my alcohol like intake and like I don't drink. I haven't drank in last like 6 months. So
Bravo.
yeah,
Bravo.
and thank you.
And part of that is biologically driven as well, right? So
Mhm,
one of the things that they have found recently is that the ease by which we can fall into an addiction, if you will, um, can really be ramped up if by our father's drinking. So if your biological father also used alcohol as well as your mom, then that kind of pre-programmed you
mhm.
to have addiction difficulties. And it's not like a disease per se, as it is, it changes the way your brain, certain areas of your brain, like it's called the loci de, I'm going to butcher the phrase, Coriolis. No, I didn't say that right. I just say the L of C. It's easier. But it's it's the part of our brain that processes dopamine and everything. And that's what's behind addictions, whether it's to a substance or to alcohol or to a behavior like gambling or sex,
Yeah,
So,
because I feel like, once I quit, like, the alcohol, I felt like I needed something to replace that, so it was either
mhm.
caffeine or, like, energy drinks, so I used to drink a lot of energy
Or
drinks
sugar.
with sugar and, like,
Yeah,
get myself all hyped up because I like that feeling, and
yeah.
so, um and then I got, this past probably, like, couple like, a year ago, like or over a year ago, like they thought I had like ADHD
Mhm,
because I was so always hyper, and I
mhm.
just like and this is before I kind of like figured out like FASD like
Yeah.
was related. Somehow I just totally forgot about it. Like in the past, like, oh, why did I forget that? My sister actually said that, like, told me about that. And then it kind of happened when I was talking to my therapist about my childhood. I'm like, oh, well, okay, now it's like clicking more. It's like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. And because I just could not understand it because I didn't feel like I fit in the ADHD
Hmm.
part or the autism spectrum part.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like, I'm very
There's,
high functioning.
yeah.
I'm
But there's a
very, very,
lot of overlapping symptoms, right? A
yeah,
lot of behavioral characteristics are on both lists, or all three lists, or all four lists, right?
yeah,
And it could be that you genuinely have both things, or it could be that it's not the ADHD or the autism, but it's the FASD all along. But
yeah.
as far as the sugar addiction, another piece of that, Elena, is that when we were in the womb,
Hmm.
we were bathed in alcohol. Our brains and our bodies were getting alcohol throughout the pregnancy, and then all of a sudden, when we were delivered, boom, that got cut off.
Yeah. And
And
it's,
so that
yeah.
also contributes to sugar addiction because alcohol is broken down as a sugar.
Hmm.
It's
I
that,
heard something, but I didn't like realize like, I just could not understand like if it's not alcohol, I had to figure out it's heavy, something that'll like craving like sugar or
mhm,
like energy drinks or something. And it's
yeah,
like drink. It's not more like food, it's more like drinks. So
yeah,
it's like I need a drink because I
yeah,
can't have alcohol because it'll make me sick. So I had to have something that's like alcohol, but
yeah,
it's like it won't make me sick. So like
yeah,
the energy drinks was so full of sugar, but
yeah,
that buzz was like almost there. Like it's almost
yeah,
like a happy cat. So it's just like, okay, I just need
yeah.
one,
You
two.
you know how Dr. Brown was talking about sleep in the one episode you listened to?
Yeah.
You should go further back in my list of episodes and listen to him talk about sugar and energy drinks.
Oh, yeah, I know.
He's he's got me drinking water. I put the crystal light away and picked up the water bottle.
Yeah, I once in a I slowed down on the like energy drinks since like with the medications that I'm on
Hmm.
really just the doctor's like you really should like cut
Yeah,
down. I haven't
yeah,
cut down like completely, but I have slowed down.
yeah.
So I've been
That's a
like
step in the right direction.
yeah, I've been
Yeah,
drinking a lot more like water, exercising more,
yeah,
trying to like find ways to get the energy out without actually like putting more energy in my body,
yeah,
but to
yeah.
release it so I'll feel tired like during bedtime. Because
Hmm.
I know it's like usually when I work out or I get myself tired like just before bed where I'm too tired to even do anything else, I'll just
Hmm.
go to my bed and lay down. I try to find like that pattern and like try to keep that scheduled.
So that helps you fall asleep. What about staying asleep? Do you stay asleep through the night when you exercise right before bed?
No, because I have like these I wake up like on and off throughout the night and
Yeah,
I usually get like when I get nightmares usually when I'm in a deep like night terrors. So
yeah,
it's I tend to like I can't kind of get myself to stay
yeah,
asleep.
yeah,
Like I can fall asleep and then like I'll wake up and then I'm like already hyped up and then
yeah,
I'll be like, okay, I mean go
yeah,
back to bed and then it's like especially when it's a stressful day or I'm like nervous about the next
yeah,
day. It's like that's the hardest part.
yeah. Well, I hope that listening to that episode that Jared did with me on sleep, I hope that that was helpful, and that, maybe re-listening to that a time or two can really help
Yeah,
you figure out that what's going to work for you with sleep, because if we're well rested, everything else does go better. But
yeah,
we're wrapping up, an hour already. I can't believe that time has just disappeared on us. Is there anything else, Elena, that you would like to share with the listeners or viewers about maybe, if you suspect at all that alcohol plays a role in your life struggles, why it would be valuable to get that figured out?
I believe like figuring that out or at least getting diagnosed would be a tremendous help for
Mm.
people, like because not only will it kind of like get you peace of mind and like the understanding, but
Mhm.
also just like self-care, like self-forgiveness. And
Yeah,
I kind of like put that a lot through like people don't aren't aware that you gotta have self-forgiveness too and
yeah,
self-forgive your birth parents or whoever even
yeah,
or mother and you know
yeah. We have to give grace.
yeah,
Give grace to our mothers and our fathers, because we know that that does affect the
yeah,
way we turn
yeah,
out. We have to give them grace because they didn't have that understanding of what they were doing and how it would harm us. But we also have to give ourselves grace,
yeah,
around the struggles that we have. And, I agree with you. It does tremendously help, because
yeah,
we've heard for so many years in our childhoods, adolescence, young adulthood, why is this hard for you? Why aren't you getting this? What's wrong with you that you're still doing X, Y, or Z? Right.
yeah,
And understanding that it's a brain thing. It's a
yeah. And
brain thing.
you can't beat yourself up all the
Yeah.
time. If you
Yeah.
can't get one thing, always don't give up and just try to find like a different like, solution,
Yeah.
because there's always a solution to a problem, even if you can't figure out right then
Yeah.
and there. Usually in time, it'll kind of like um click. So
Yeah.
I always, I also use a lot of comedy,
Hmm.
um, like jokes and like
Yeah.
you know, just even laugh it off if you have to, or
Yeah.
just it doesn't always have to be such a serious thing. It's
Yeah.
just it can just you know be like um in a way like a humor thing.
Yeah.
Like I know it's a
Well,
serious topic, but it's also like
they
people
they
use it.
do say laughter is good medicine.
Yeah,
And I agree with you. If you can't laugh at yourself, then you're going to be pretty miserable.
yeah. And sometimes I think like a lot of the comedians like that I've actually found out who have FASD are like very intelligent when it comes
Hmm.
to making others laugh, or
Yeah.
using their comedian to give the world,
Yeah.
it gets their attention. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, the pressure isn't always on me, and
Yeah.
I don't always have to take everything so
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
And
I think too with that, Elena, that one of the things that makes comedians so funny is that they look at situations just a little bit differently from the
mm,
norm, right?
yeah,
And well, hello, that's what we do with FASD. We look at things just a little bit differently,
right.
right?
And yeah, and I use a lot of
Yeah.
my comedy like at my program, and I like to make people laugh, and I
Yeah.
like to use my humor because
Yeah.
it's just for me it's awkward. Like I don't know how else to help somebody who's
Yeah.
upset
Yeah.
in like that point in moment, and it's like, okay, what can if I see him laughing, it feels better because we're both laughing at the same thing. We're not like
Yeah.
both crying like, I don't understand your situation right now, like let's just you know
Yeah.
let's laugh this
Yeah.
off. And it's like, oh wait, well this is actually serious, like, oh well,
Well,
but you
there
can,
is a time and place, right? Because sometimes the
yeah,
best thing is to let someone sit in their pain for a little bit, just to
right,
honor it, right?
but
Instead of just covering it up. But
yeah,
but there's definitely a role for humor and laughter.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think there should be a balance. Like there's what you said,
Yeah.
there's a time and
A
place,
time and a place.
and with people like that struggle, people that struggle
Yeah.
so much with like even with mental illness and stuff, I usually like I'm learning to like not always cover myself up with humor, like kind of like it's okay to let yourself cry and show emotion, and and just listen to
Hmm.
people and their
Hmm.
story and just say, hey, like I understand what you're going through. And
Yeah.
just you don't always have to give advice like, hey, this is, you can just
Yeah.
say, just listen. And
Yeah.
that's what I like about YouTube is when people tell their stories, you just listen and
Yeah.
you can comment below and be like, hey, I totally get what you're going
Yeah.
through, totally right.
Yeah.
And people like that's how you bring people together.
Yeah.
And
And
like, hey,
Elena, that's what brought you to living with FASD, right?
yeah,
Because you recognized I have a story to tell that others will be able to relate to. So you reached out to me, and I'm so glad that you did. And I'm so pleased to have you come on the show and share your story and be that beacon of hope for
mhm,
others. Because we're not only sharing ourselves and our stories, our vulnerability to help other adults living with FASD, but we're also that beacon of hope for parents out there who
right,
are trying to wrestle with, what does the future hold for my child? And and so by listening to all of our stories,
hmm
they can get that opposite picture from everything that the internet searches, you know, portray as gloom and doom. Oh, my child's going to be a homeless murderer in prison. Well,
right.
no.
No, it's just there's always like there's always light at the end of the
Yeah,
tunnel. And
yeah,
the one thing that I can't stress enough is to get support from
yeah,
family, from other people. If you don't have family, get it from friends. If
yeah,
you don't have a lot of friends, get it from like caseworkers or anyone who's around, even if it's Facebook,
yeah,
media sites,
yeah,
ask questions,
yeah.
just
And there's a couple really good groups, and I'm going to segue into this now, Elena. Thank you for giving me the idea. There
oh
are a lot of groups on Facebook for fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. She and I, Elena and I, are both in one called Flying with Broken Wings, and it is a marvelous international group, very supportive, made up of individuals like us who are living with it, also a lot of caretakers. Um, and we all kind of pitch in and share our perspectives on things. But there's also a Facebook group for this audience, right? So if you go to groups on Facebook and put in Living with FASD podcast, that's where you'll find us. So, of course, Facebook groups are always free, right? So they're good resources. And that's just two, right? When I was writing my book last year, I looked up how many groups are there. And at that time, there were over 90 Facebook
that's a
groups
lot.
for FASD. So there's a lot out there. There's also support groups here on Zoom that you can tap into. So if you're looking for something like that, then write to me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com and I will hook you up with those resources. And Elena is absolutely correct. If you are suspecting alcohol has something to do with your life struggles, then it would be important to get an assessment if you can. So there are resources for that. And a really good resource is FASD United. They have something called the Family Navigator. You can find them at fasdunited.org and hit the tab for Family Navigator. And they have just so many resources at their fingertips to plug in where you're living, what you're needing, and they will hook you up. Um, so I can't believe we've been just over an hour already, Elena. So I've got to wrap this up. for this week on Living with FASD. But everybody, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time. Please email me, livingwithfasd podcast@gmail.com. Let me know your feedback on today's episode. You can also put your feedback straight into YouTube, straight into Spotify, whatever platform you're listening to this on. And I'm always happy to make anyone's acquaintance. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Living with FASD.